Good morning, y'all. It's Adam Keller here on Shop Talk, brought to you by the Valley Labor Report. It's Thursday, June 29th. I do have an episode for you that I'm excited to share. We'll be pressing play here in just a moment. Just a point of personal privilege and quick programming note before we get into the episode. Sorry for the late start this morning. We do aim to start at 9:30 a.m. on Thursday mornings, but as y'all have noticed over the last few weeks, my schedule has been very erratic, and so it's been difficult to stay true to that time. I was actually working with my IATSE 900 sisters and brothers yesterday and last night. I didn't get home till about 3 o'clock this morning. And so my apologies, but I did oversleep a little bit this morning. That's why we are starting late. And I just wanted to kind of mention on that note, I mention it later in the episode, but the schedule has been quite difficult this summer, so I do apologize for the inconsistencies in there. What we've noticed is that most people who are listening to Shop Talk or watching Shop Talk are doing it after it's live, and we don't necessarily have a lot of folks who are tuning in live. And so hopefully the start time is not really a big deal. If you've noticed, most of the content that we have on Shop Talk is pretty evergreen. It's not necessarily breaking news or anything like that. It's content that you can come back to whenever. And so just wanted to put that out there. It's been difficult to maintain the schedule this summer, and it doesn't look to be easing up any, but we're going to do our best to provide high quality content every single week. And continue to bring you good episodes like today. It is a really good episode with Ellen David Friedman. Today's our Labor Notes episode. So I wasn't sure if I was going to be able to have any time in the studio this week. So I went ahead and recorded the entire episode, which you will hear momentarily. But just wanted to apologize for the late start, let folks know what's going on. I do have some extra work this summer that has come down the pike, which I'm very thankful for, and I'm doing some organizing work and a couple hours away from here. And so, it's been a busy summer. It's been a good summer, though. And for the Valley Labor Report, we just came back from Chattanooga, which I'll mention later in the episode. And next month in July, we'll be in Orange Beach for the for the Alabama Building Trades Convention. All the trade unions in the state are going to be getting together down at Gulf Shores, Orange Beach area, and so we'll be there as special guests to speak and to get to know some folks and hopefully spread the word about what we're trying to do here on the Valley Labor Report, which is provide independent working class media by and for the labor movement here in Alabama and across the South. So without further ado, I'm going to turn it over to my episode I recorded with Ellen David Friedman from Labor Notes. Really looking forward to y'all checking this out. I appreciate all who have listened regularly over the last few weeks of Shop Talk. I don't think you'll be disappointed by this interview. So with that said, let me know what you think. Hey, good morning, y'all. Welcome to the Valley Labor Report. My name is Adam Keller, and this is Shop Talk, our new Thursday morning episode we're producing every week with a focus on labor education, history, and training. It's Thursday, June 29th, and we're broadcasting live-ish from Spice Radio Studio in the heart of the Tennessee Valley in Huntsville, Alabama. Every episode is live streamed on YouTube and Facebook and is released on your favorite podcasting platform in the coming days. Today on the show, I interview Ellen David Friedman. She is a retired organizer for Vermont NEA and a member of the Labor Notes board. So Ellen David Friedman is joining me for an interview to talk about what to do when your union breaks your heart. And I think this will be a must listen for all union activists and allies, so definitely stay tuned. At the Valley Labor Report, we are big fans of Labor Notes. Labor Notes is a media and organizing project that since 1979 has been the voice of union activists who want to put the movement back in the labor movement. Through their magazine, website, books, conferences, and workshops, Labor Notes promotes organizing, aggressive strategies to fight concessions, alliances with worker centers, and unions that are run by their members. Labor Notes is also a network of rank and file members, local union leaders, and labor activists who know the labor movement is worth fighting for. They encourage connections between workers in different unions, worker centers, communities, industries, and countries to strengthen the movement from the bottom up. With 40 years of movement building behind them, Labor Notes exist as a resource for leaders and union members who want to chart a new course for the labor movement. At the Valley Labor Report, we are proud subscribers and supporters. We encourage our listeners to do the same. Go to labornotes.org to find out more. So regular listeners will know that I plug Labor Notes every week and share their upcoming training opportunities. We truly appreciate their sponsorship of Shop Talk, but also the work that they do. Each month on Shop Talk, the goal is to have one Labor Notes featured episode every month where we talk to someone from the Labor Notes crew, or we do a deep dive on a Steward's Corner article, or we do a preview of some of the great workshops that they provide. As a union activist, I can't recommend Labor Notes enough. And so I'm really looking forward to today's episode with Ellen David Friedman. I think it's going to be a great conversation. And one final programming note, as you'll notice, I'm not in Spice Radio Studio right now. I'm in a hotel in Chattanooga, Tennessee on June 22nd. So Jacob and I are in Chattanooga. We are covering the Southeastern States District Council for the iron workers. The iron workers are having their big competition for apprenticeship, their apprentices. And so locals from all over the Southeast are here in Chattanooga. We really appreciate Brother Jeb Miles and Ironworkers 477 out of Tuscumbia for the invitation. And so we got a chance to speak to the delegates yesterday morning. And today we will be out checking out the competition and seeing all the great work that these guys are doing. So excited to talk about that on the show. But that's why we're had a couple, episodes where I've been out of town and we've had to change the dynamics a little bit. So do apologize about that. And to be honest with the audience, a lot of the summer is up in flux. I've got some other traveling that I have to do for work. I have some new work coming down the pike that I'm excited to announce soon. And so, the summer is kind of in flux. Shop Talk, we're doing our best to maintain some consistency, which is why I'm going ahead and pre-recording this interview today to ensure that we have a good episode for Thursday, June 29th. So with that out of the way, we are going to talk with Ellen about what to do when your union breaks your heart. Welcome back to the Valley Labor Report. This is Adam Keller here, and I have Ellen David Friedman. Thank you so much for joining us on the Valley Labor Report Shop Talk.
Great pleasure. Thanks for the invitation.
Absolutely. So before we really get going, would you mind introducing yourself and telling us a little bit about your background and your journey in the labor movement?
You bet. I've been a union organizer for almost 50 years. I came into the movement in the early 1970s. I'd finished college, and I kind of always knew that this is where I wanted to be. I had the idea very, very early in my life that, well, none of us survive without working. Like, everybody's got to work. So somehow I got the idea this was pretty damn basic and we should pay attention to it. And fortunately, there is a lot written and a lot understood about how work is organized, what it means to the workers, what it means to the economy. And I was really drawn by the idea that people who work should get a lot of respect and a lot of benefit and a lot of dignity in their work lives. It was pretty clear to me even as a child that that was not true. And, I grew up during the period of the kind of the heyday of the civil rights movement in the 1950s and 60s. So it was quite obvious to me that there were different classes of workers who were treated very differently. Um, my mother tells the story that my report card in first grade, I think they came home and the comment from the teacher was, well, Ellen is well liked by the other children because she always wants things to be fair. So I think that was pretty funny. But anyway, that was a start for me, the idea of fairness. So anyway, I've been in a movement for a long, long time. I've worked as an organizer. I grew up in New York, but lived in Vermont for most of my adult life, and worked for the Municipal Employees Union, for the Electrical Workers Union, and then finally was drawn to the Teachers Union and worked for the National Education Association in Vermont, which, so the NEA is actually the largest union in the US and has over 3 million members, and, represents mostly public school employees, teachers, teaching assistants, custodians, bus drivers, secretaries, clerical workers, and so on. And for me, that was a fantastic experience because it's a union that at the time, and still is, it's very decentralized and kind of democratic, meaning it was each local was expected to take care of its own business, which I really liked. So it was what we think of as a bottom-up union rather than a top-down union. Anyway, so I did that for 20 years and then took an unexpected turn in my life. My husband and I ended up going to live and work in China for 10 years.
Wow.
Yeah, it was a little unexpected between 2005 and 2015. Kind of an interesting story, but I ended up working in many, many different levels and layers of the labor movement in China. But things had begun to change in about 2013 when Xi Jinping came to power. The openness of the environment that we had enjoyed closed down, and I was visited by National Security Police in 2015 and told I had to leave the country. I'd been waiting for it, so I wasn't that surprised. Anyway, since then, so more or less for the last 10 years, I'm retired and I volunteer full time in the labor movement through the platform of Labor Notes. And Labor Notes, which some of your listeners, your audience may know, is a project about 45 years old. It was founded in the late 70s, and we do a monthly magazine, publish books. Here's the magazine right here. And we publish books, have conferences and meetings, do training and consultation. And the purpose of Labor Notes is to put the movement back in the labor movement. We strongly believe that all workers need unions. Doesn't matter where you are, what kind of work you do, big or small, doesn't matter. The rights of workers are only won and only protected when workers themselves get together, talk about what they need, figure out how they're going to go after it, and how to fight for it. They have to learn how to fight often because it's scary to do, and then to protect their right to have an opinion about things at work and to have a voice at work. So that's what Labor Notes does. It has been for me a North Star in my world for as long as I can remember. And it's now a great honor. I've been serving as the chair of the board of the project for almost 10 years, I guess.
That's fantastic. That's fantastic. So there's a lot there that that resonated with me. I also grew up really for the underdog, and I was always kind of the shortest kid in class. And so I think that was sort of, had that underdog chip on my shoulder. Even my favorite football team is an underdog, and so I think that just sort of I can really relate to that. Your early childhood there, and your work for Labor Notes, of course. Labor Notes has been a North Star for me as well, and particularly here in the South, where labor maybe is not as prominent in the culture. Having Labor Notes as a resource has just been huge, and you know. I don't know if I'd mentioned to you off air, but I am a former UNICEF director down here in Alabama. So, your work with educators definitely speaks to me. Glad to hear about your experiences in Vermont. One of these days, we'll talk about my experiences in Alabama. A
I'd
little bit
love to.
different.
I'd love to hear about that. You bet.
Yeah. Yeah. So, one thing that you have done through Labor Notes is write quite a few articles for the Stewards Corner, which we've mentioned on this show before. It's a great resource, uh, really handy, like training type material. So, talk to us about your work with Stewards Corner, and why do you do that? Why is that important, do you think?
Yeah, thank you for that, and so glad to hear about your background in the NEA in Alabama. There is a lot for us, I think, to learn about how the labor movement actually works from the experience in the public schools. Maybe we can return to that at another time. But one of the things it taught me, which responds to your question about the Stewards Corner, is that um, when we have unions, they are not like insurance companies. They shouldn't
Mm,
be like insurance companies. Um, Unfortunately, many of our unions act like insurance companies, and sometimes see that in NEA union locals and others. And by that we mean, you become a member because you are worried about getting in trouble, and you pay your dues, which is kind of like paying an insurance premium. And then if you get
mm.
in trouble, you want to call someone, call your UNICEF director, call Adam and say, Adam, can you help me? And it's like filing a claim. And then Adam does some paperwork or talks to a lawyer, and hopefully you get it fixed. So
Ooh, boy, you're bringing back memories for me.
I hope, I'm sure it's bringing back some scary memories too, because some of the problems that members have, they're very serious. I mean, some are small problems, some are problems of their own making. If you're going to like persist in not doing your job or coming in late or getting high during the day, whatever, you shouldn't be doing that. But then some of them are really serious problems that have to do with all the abuse
Mm,
that workers take at work. Unfair treatment, short staffing, heavy workloads, not getting the breaks you need, not getting the resources you need, not getting the support you need, all kind of bullying bosses. There are many problems, right? So for me, Stewards Corner are a wonderful conversation to have with working people and union members who read the magazine, because they are very, very practical. They're very concrete, and they try and not only answer questions that people face in their daily work lives, but kind of hand them the tools in the toolbox, and say, look, here are some things that have worked. You might want to give some of these things a try. It doesn't have to be exactly like this. You're going to adapt it to your own situation. But here's a tool you can actually pick up. So the idea really of the Stewards Corner is you don't need to be a lawyer. You don't need to be an expert. You don't need to be a union staffer. You don't even need to have been in your union for years and years and years. Most of the things that we put into Steward Corner are pretty common sense, easy to understand, easy to try out. And so the goal whenever I write a Steward's Corner is that, I just finished one that maybe will be up in the next month or so, about open bargaining. So open bargaining is something a lot of people have been talking about for the last few years. But why I wanted to write the Steward's Corner is to make clear it's not just open bargaining at the bargaining table. That's like the end.
mm,
But it begins in way, way, way earlier than that. In fact, it should happen every day. I think that might be the title I put to it, sort of open bargaining every day. And then so I listed about 6 or 7 different phases of bargaining, including, well, first, how do you educate members about what's in the contract? How do you get discussion going? See what's important to members. Encourage members to read and to learn about the contract themselves. Identify what's not working and what's not good in the contract. What do you want to improve? And then you go to surveying. Well, surveying is not just one and done. You know, send somebody a paper survey or a or an electronic survey. But I talk about how surveying can be part of a long dialogue process where you have one-on-one conversations, then get people into small groups together to talk about not only what are their priorities and they care about as individuals, they got to hear what other people care about.
Right.
And they got to grapple with that themselves, you know, in a group, to agree on what are the things we share, what are our shared priorities. Otherwise, if we're just carrying our own individual interests into bargaining, the boss is going to use that and divide us against each other. They're going to give something to the senior workers that's going to hurt the junior, this category or this shift. And anyway,
Right.
so I go on and on and on in that vein, and that's just an example of the kind of stewards corners we write.
Yeah, absolutely. And I love that they are accessible and common sense. It's not something that's, it's not like reading, a grad school assignment. It's very down to earth, practical. And going back to the education aspect of things, as a teacher, I found that I had the most success when I was sharing lesson plans with other teachers and bouncing ideas off each other and like, hey, what worked in your class? Maybe what worked in the other subject or a younger grade or older grade. And, I think sharing our best practices as union members and union leaders is just so important for the reasons you listed.
Really works. And the other thing is that I think that the basis of really good, strong unionism is a very high degree of respect for your coworkers and respect for yourself. And I know that often in our workplaces, we're encouraged really to compete with each other, and competition is the opposite of unionism.
Right.
We should be building. So the example you just offered is a very important one. Um, and I think we emphasize that in Stewart Corners too, is like how you get together and share your experiences, learn from each other, respect each other's experience. It's the basis of solidarity.
Absolutely. Absolutely.
Hmm.
So, as I mentioned earlier in the show, Labor Notes has some great workshops. And at the end of the show, I am going to share, the upcoming opportunities that are out there right now this summer. One of the workshops I've heard a lot of great things about is what to do when your union breaks your heart. And it is a potentially controversial workshop, obviously. And I mean, honest conversations can be tough. Honest conversations can make enemies. I know how that feels, and I'm sure most folks listening do too. But despite all that, it's worth it because if we can't keep it real about where we're at and where we've been, if we can't be honest about the past and the present, we have no hope for shaping the future in a positive direction. So that's why I think it's important that we have these kinds of conversations rather than just, keep our head in the sand, even if it's maybe the more convenient thing to do sometimes. Yes, it can make people and sponsors uncomfortable, but it's critical to the growing and the strengthening of this labor movement that working people in this country so urgently need. So, with my preamble out of the way, Ellen, I'd love for you to take it away and talk to us about what to do when your union breaks your heart.
Adam, that was beautifully put. I agree with you entirely. This is a subject that does sometimes make nervous. But here's the other thing that we discovered about it. It's something everyone wants to talk about. So the reason these workshops were started is because I wrote a Stewart's Corner. It must have been right before the pandemic, I think, really got going. I know it was it came out on a Valentine's Day issue, so February maybe 2020, and it got an extraordinary amount of likes and shares. We were all shocked. And, um, what it basically said is, look, many, many union members at one time or another have had their heart broken. Either they eagerly joined a union, um, thinking that there was going to be some way to get involved, some way for them to learn new things, gain some skills, to work with other union members on solving problems, but found out that that's not actually what their union did, that they
Mm.
couldn't manage to find a way to get involved. Or they had a great idea and they tried to promote it inside the union and were kind of shut down or shut out by sometimes staff or elected leaders. Or they had a very, very serious problem. Maybe they and coworkers had a serious problem, and they really thought the union should help them figure it out, fight for them, but that didn't happen. We certainly know the problems that union members face when they discover that their union leaders are corrupt. There's been a lot of that in U.S. labor history, and um, two of the two of our largest, most important industrial unions, the Teamsters and the United Auto Workers, it took groups of members, rank and file members, getting themselves into caucuses, which are, internal groups inside unions that are trying to fix their unions. In the Teamsters, it's Teamsters for Democratic Union, and in the United Auto Workers, a group called UAWD, which stands for Unite All Workers for Democracy. In both cases, these members had to go to the U.S. Justice Department and say, you got to get rid of our corrupt leaders. We can't seem to do it from below, but they're taking money, they're stealing the members' money, they're colluding with the boss. And so those are very serious examples of heartbreak. But it's often much smaller than that. It's you know, you're a union member, a contract's being bargained, you don't hear anything about it, you're not asked for your opinion. The next thing the president of the bargaining team comes out and it's not a good deal. It's not what you need. It's not strong enough. And you feel like the union leadership is too close to the boss. So there are all kinds of reasons your heart might be broken. And what we say about it is that's good. It's good that your heart is broken because it means that you have an idea that the union could be better.
Mm.
You know,
Yes.
for your heart to be broken, it means you had to have an idea of something else.
Right.
And so we kind of start with that and say, you are right if you have a different idea of unionism. We agree with you. We think unions can be better. Many of them are better. And we also have seen unions change and reform over time and become better. So how do you do that? And that's what I talked about in the article. And then, as I said, there was so much response. We decided to offer it as a monthly online workshop. I've been doing that, I don't know, maybe for a year or so, and hundreds of people sign up. It's always kind of amazing to see, and we all pile into a Zoom room together, and I just conduct a dialogue and ask who in the room is there because they've got some burning problem they need to talk about, and someone will put up their hands and off we go. So what's been very interesting about it is that first of all, people come from every single part of the country and
Mm.
Canada. We've had people on from the UK, from Sweden, from Mexico, um, from every industry, from every union. It just cuts across. Um, Sometimes I'm quite surprised. In the last half year or so, there's been a lot of cultural workers, like stage and theater workers, people who work construction in the theater
Mm.
industry. I was on the phone yesterday with someone who was following up, had been in one of these workshops, and sometimes people ask for like a follow-up conversation. and this guy is I think an opera singer, and is in a union and wanted to talk about how to fix some problems. So it's quite varied, but there are some themes, and those themes include first and foremost, uh, don't you may be really unhappy. You may be justified in being really unhappy, but don't just blame it on, we've got a bad president or we got bad elected leaders, um, or we have a bad business agent or staffer. That's not a good enough explanation. And also, even if you changed that, if you, let's say you elected a new president, it may not be enough.
Mm,
We really believe, we've seen this after many years of experience, that how things change and improve is by changing the culture of your union from the
right,
bottom up.
right.
And that is a, hang on a minute, Adam, I got to take a quick pause. So as I was saying, it's never enough to just change like leadership at the top. We really are thinking about how we change the culture of the union, starting at the bottom and building upwards. The, the two goals that we always have in mind, I would say, in labor notes and when we talk with union members are, one, uh, we're trying to build unions that are really democratic and inclusive, where the ideas of all the members are welcome. Well, of course, that's going to lead to debate. It should. I mean, we're very different.
Right.
People have different ideas and needs and priorities. And so the job of the union should be to make a space for people to listen to each other, to debate, to disagree, and ultimately to figure out how to agree on something. I'm not going to agree on everything, but can you agree on some things so that you can get some work done and solve some problems? So for us, we call that democratic unionism. We're not talking about the Democratic Party, of course. We're talking about a way of being together.
Right.
And there are ways to do it. Like, first of all, maybe your union doesn't hold meetings. Well, as a member, you should encourage meetings. You should get people, get your coworkers together and say, don't you think it'd be good if we had regular meetings so we can guide the union and find out what the union is doing? So it can be as simple as that. And you can try different ways to encourage your leadership to schedule meetings. Sometimes in the bylaws, it says there shall be meetings, every month or 4 times a year or something. So if that's in your bylaws, you can go to your officers and say, hey, we'd like you to schedule a meeting. Or there are almost every union constitution or bylaws will have a way for special meetings to be held. You
Right.
petition, things like that. So
And this is a good time to say, to remind folks that if you're trying to get involved or you're trying to make a difference in your union, knowing your constitution and bylaws, any policies, any official documents that are supposed to govern the union, you ought to know those. And it's possible you might learn them better than the folks who are in charge. That is certainly a possibility, but whether that's the case or not, it's important to know the rules that your union has. And so I really encourage folks, when you're early in this process, study those documents, learn them, learn what you like, what you don't like about it, but learn how it's supposed to operate.
totally agree, Adam. And for some people, I'm sorry to say, for some union members, they've never seen a copy of their bylaws, and maybe they've asked for a copy, but nobody's going to give it to them. Just so you know, it is a law in the United States. We know there are a lot of laws that are never followed or never enforced, but it happens to be a law that comes under what we refer to as the Union Members Bill of Rights, which has different names, but it comes under what we call the LMRDA, the Labor Management Reporting and Disclosure Act. which says that certain things have got to be made available to union members, including your constitution and bylaws, and that union members have to be allowed to vote on their officers. They they have a right to financial disclosure. So there are a few basic things. So I'm glad you pointed that out.
Yeah, absolutely.
And anyway, so we cover all kinds of different topics, but most often we start with talk to your coworkers. There's one thing I say over and over again, which is stop looking up and start looking out. Lots of times we think, as workers, we're always thinking a lot about the boss. What's the boss doing? How are they messing things up for this? Why are they so horrible? Whatever. We're thinking about the boss. And in our unions, we're often thinking about our union leadership. Our advice really is don't pay so much attention to them up there. They already have power. They're using their power in the way they have chosen to use it. If you don't like how they're using their power, the answer is you figure out how to build your own power. And it's
Mm,
at the bottom. It's
mm.
with your coworkers. So talking to your coworkers is always going to be the first step to heal your heartbreak.
Yeah, absolutely. I think so too. I think that's huge. And I mean, I think there's going to be your natural reaction of hurt, of sadness, of there's going to be some folks who would say, why don't you just quit your union? And, I think I've encountered those conversations with workers, in right to work environments, open shop environments. They don't have to belong. They don't have to even pay fees. And so if they have a bad experience, we have a very consumer oriented culture. And like you said, a lot of unions reinforce the view, unfortunately, of themselves as like an insurance agency. Well, what do you do if Geico or Progressive or, these insurance agencies aren't up to snuff? Oh, well, as a customer, you just pick up and leave. All right. You find an alternative. And of course, with a union, maybe there's not an alternative, but the alternative for some people is just, no membership at all. Uh, and so I think it's so urgent and important that folks recognize that, unions are human institutions. And like any human institution, is going to have flaws, is going to feature bad humans occasionally, or humans that are not behaving, the way we want them to behave. But that's not an excuse to abandon the institution, or to give up on the institution. It's more we have to recognize issues when they arise, and like you said, work together to solve those.
Okay.
Um, and I love what you said about looking out, not up, and building your own power. If you're not happy with the way power is situated currently, then the task is to build your own power. You can't run away from the power and hide from it and think that that's going to solve the issue, because it won't. It just won't. It will not leave you better off as an individual worker, but it certainly won't leave the collective better off
That's
if you ditch the union, right? So I think you've got to look at it both from your individual point of view. You're better off sticking with the union, but so is everybody else. And what you could do in having those conversations um, could be huge, could transform a lot of people's lives.
absolutely. And there's there's one other thing I think to add to it, which is you bet a lot of people think I don't like this, I'm just going to quit. Obviously, that doesn't make anything better. Um, but the other thing that we're really seeing a lot of now is I don't like this job, so I'm going to quit this job and go somewhere else.
Mm-hmm.
And now what I think I'm beginning to see is that more and more people are realizing, oh, it's not really better anywhere else. Like maybe, I'm 32 and I've already had 17 jobs or something, right? That means you've had some life experience and you've begun to see there are patterns.
Right.
And one of the patterns that I think people, particularly, I would say people in their 20s and 30s right now are seeing is, oh, it's not better anywhere. There's similar patterns everywhere. There are these bullying bosses, they're micromanaging, we're understaffed. The wages are really flatlined. I can't afford to live. I'm still living in my parents' basement, whatever. So that I think the attitude is starting to change to say, well, I better stay and fight. And this is incredibly exciting well, it should be exciting for all of us. Very exciting for those of us that came into the labor movement in the 60s and 70s, which was a fighting labor movement at that time, but then kind of went into a really deep dive for most of my adult life, unfortunately, but is definitely so. The bad news right now in our society, and really in many, many places around the world, is that the economy, as it has developed since the last financial crisis, since 2008, is one of increasing inequality and increasing desperation for the great majority of people. So, as we know, the rich are getting much, much, much richer and much more politically powerful, controlling the Supreme Court, changing voting rules, ignoring, like, look at Starbucks and how they've been able to ignore the fact that hundreds of their stores have unionized and they still haven't bargained a single contract. So there's
Right.
way, way, way too much power in the hands of the elite. But it's gotten much rougher for everybody else, including especially, I would say, people in the generation under the age of about 35 or so. So that's the bad news. And the good news is, as we're seeing it in labor notes, and I know many, many people who are paying attention to the labor movement, it's showing up with a tremendous surge of organizing, especially among young people. I've had this unexpected but great pleasure of working in the last few years with college students who are organizing undergraduate student worker unions.
Wow.
So before the pandemic, I think there were 2 undergrad student unions. And now I think there are like 25 or more. It's kind of astonishing.
Yeah, that's fantastic.
Isn't that great? And these are undergrads. Most undergrads have to work these days. And they're not for experience, right? They're working to be able to try and keep out of terrifying debt.
Right.
So, they work in library or as residential advisors or in the dining services or grounds, in labs, different things. And the pay is very low, and they're carrying their course load, and trying to maintain their own lives. So this has been a really exciting wave of organizing. And some of them, it's also interesting. Some of them are joining, you know, parent unions and affiliating with them, and some of them are organizing independent unions, which is a great experiment. There has been an amazing expansion of graduate student unions
Mm.
and graduate student strikes. So that's become a particular hobby of mine in the last few years, and they're the biggest, well, certainly the biggest strike of last year. The biggest higher education strike in U.S. history happened in the University of California system, where all graduate workers, nearly 50,000, were on strike for 6 weeks. There have been graduate student strikes at Columbia University, at Rutgers, at Temple. The University of Michigan grad students went on strike in March, and they're still on strike. They're going to probably go into the fall still on strike.
Mm.
So this is a vibrant, growing part of our labor movement. And of course, as we know, it's happening elsewhere. There's a lot of retail clerks, retail workers, hospitality, hotel and hospitality, restaurant workers are organizing. Manufacturing is continuing to organize. We know that in existing unions, like the Teamsters Union at UPS, obviously you and your audience knows are gearing up for what will very likely be a truly powerful UPS strike in August. So not only is the labor movement kind of really coming back to life, but it is tilted in the direction of a lot of young workers. And so these are, I would say, some of these are people who they're not going to stand for heartbreaking unions. They get into
Right.
a union that's breaking their heart. They're going to say, "No, I got to do something about this."
Right.
It's a promising moment.
I think so too, because it's like you said, it's not just that there's new organizing and new campaigns that are happening. It's that it's in total, brand new areas of the economy of the society, and it does seem like there is an energy behind the more democratic part of our movement, the more reform minded and maybe progressive minded folks in the labor movement, and seeing the success of reformers within the Teamsters and the UAW and elsewhere, I think is inspiring a lot of folks to to take on issues in their own union and try to make things better there. And I agree with you. I think you're right, and I hope you're right. That this wave, this new generation of folks getting involved in labor are looking for something bigger and better and stronger than we've had in a long time.
Yes.
And I think all working people, regardless of age, we need that, and we're depending on that. We need a strong labor movement to address the issues in the society, as you mentioned, the rampant inequality, the corruption, the greed, the exploitation and oppression that so many of us are facing in this country. With these needs, we need collective organization. And so unions are that's the key. And that's why we do what we do on our show. I know that's why Labor Notes does what y'all do. And I'm glad we could have some hopeful conversation as well. I know we're talking about unions breaking our hearts, but I'm glad you brought up the positive vibes that we're seeing right now.
Oh yeah. Oh yeah. And I would say that contributions like you are making with this program that you do, um, absolutely cannot be underestimated. Like I have seen over and over and over again, some worker, particularly young worker, who maybe never exposed to a union, has no like idea of labor history, maybe their parents or grandparents were never in a union. Um, but they'll say, "Oh yeah, I heard something. I heard a podcast, or I listened to a show, or I read an article, and it made me start thinking." So we know that programs like this, and some of the work that Labor Notes does, are an essential part of, they say, spreading the good word.
Mm-hmm.
And we're especially impressed, obviously, at Labor Notes with the work of the Valley Labor Report, because, as you said, as everybody knows, labor is a somewhat stronger presence in certain parts of the country, but in the Deep South, it has not been, for all kinds of reasons that we well understand. And so the fact that there is this clear insurgency going on now, a lot of different experimentation happening in the southern part of the U.S. um, is can be certainly laid at the doorstep of people's hunger to see change. And when they open their eyes and look around, they can see something like your program, or they can, see something like a Labor Notes offering, because nobody can really figure all of this out on their own. Not because they can't think it through, not because people aren't capable of thinking it through, but because the feeling of isolation and powerlessness can be so strong.
Mm.
They'll just give up. They'll just say, "Why bother?" Until you hear someone talk about it and say, "Oh yeah, it's not just me. It's not just, it's happening here and here and here, and this is what people are doing to change it." And that's what's often the spark. So
Right.
you're making a great
Absolutely.
contribution.
Well, thank you. Thank you for that. And we appreciate that. We love Labor Notes and appreciate the work that y'all do. And, the mantra is educate, agitate, organize. Well, educate comes first for a reason. And I think, both of us with our education backgrounds, I think that also shapes our approach to this work as well. But it's critical that working people join together and organize. And going to experience heartbreak. I think that is often part of the process, but we have to be resilient. And resiliency comes from community, I think. And what you're speaking about with the isolation and alienation that so many of us feel in this current environment, coming together with your coworkers, building those relationships in solidarity and in struggle is a very powerful countervailing force to that alienation and isolation. So um, that's that's what I recommend for folks. Uh, don't try to fight the boss alone. Work together, uh, and don't give up on your union, even when it messes up, because ultimately you and your coworkers can make it better and build the union you deserve. So, Ellen, was there anything else that you had to share with us this morning?
Well, maybe just one more thing in closing, because this heartbreak workshop has gotten such an overwhelming response. We've decided to add another monthly workshop, which I'll be leading. The first one is on July 6th, and it'll be on it may be on the Labor Notes website as of today. You can register. It's a free online workshop, and it's called Caucus How To. And
Wow,
the reason we're offering this is because building caucuses, rank and file caucuses inside of a union that isn't working well seems to be a really good corrective. As I mentioned before, Teamsters for Democratic Union is a caucus. UAWD is a caucus. I happen to have been fortunate enough to work with a network of caucuses in teacher unions, both NEA and AFT teacher unions, been building for about 10 years, called UCOR, the United Caucuses of Rank and File Educators. And it includes caucuses like in Chicago and Los Angeles and New York and Philadelphia, but also San Antonio and, Dallas and Baltimore and many different parts of the country. And these are just rank and file members who are trying to improve their union, make it more democratic, turn it into a fighting union, make it more progressive, which unions like should be. Um, anyway, it's going to be helping people once they've gotten over their heartbreak. If you want to build a caucus, here's some help on that. So
that's awesome.
your listeners are certainly welcome to check that out.
Awesome. Thank you so much, Ellen. I've enjoyed the conversation. I appreciate all your work for the movement, and hope to speak with you again soon.
I'll look forward to it, Adam. Thank you.
Thank
Take care.
you. All right, folks. So that was my interview with Ellen David Friedman with Labor Notes. Really enjoyed that. Hope you did as well. I hope you will check out those workshops she mentioned. So there are a couple other workshops and training opportunities from Labor Notes that are coming up. One that we haven't mentioned so far is Labor and Disability Justice Towards Solidarity. It's occurring on June 28th, 7 to 9 p.m. Eastern. It's done online via Zoom. It is a free workshop, and it really sounds like more, honestly, of a dialogue and just a space for discussion. So for folks who are in the disability community, are labor organizers, activists, want to learn more about disability at work, definitely encourage you to check that out. Also want to recommend upcoming event Labor Notes is putting on July 10th from 7 to 8:30 p.m. Eastern Time. It's called The Assault on Pensions and How to Fight Back. So this workshop is going to be led by Matthew Cunningham Cook. It's a 90-minute workshop that goes over the recent history of attacks on public sector pensions, key terms and definitions of this complex subject, and examples of workers successfully beating back the employer's push to take away their hard-won benefits. Through this interactive workshop, participants will gain a comprehensive understanding of what it means to fight for their pension and action plans for organizing coworkers to defend their retirement. Matthew Cunningham Cook is a reporter at The Lever and former public pension specialist for the CWA, as well as a proud ex-Labor Notes intern. Registration is $10. You can, again, as with all of these, register at labornotes.org/events and check that out. As Ellen mentioned, there is the Caucus How To workshop that she will be leading on July 6th. from 8 to 9 p.m. Eastern. Closed captions will be turned on. If there's other accommodations, just reach out to Labor Notes and they'll do their best to help you out there. But I think that's going to be a great workshop for those of you who are trying to figure out how to revive and revitalize your union. It's going to be a great opportunity on July 6th. And also, the last one I wanted to mention is the Secrets of a Successful Organizer. They will have this workshop series back in July. It's going to be on Wednesdays from 8 to 10 p.m. Eastern on July 12th, 19th, and 26th. And they do ask that you attend all 3 workshops in the series. It's based on their widely acclaimed book, Secrets of a Successful Organizer. I'm actually rereading that book right now. I think it's great. I think these trainings are a great opportunity if you want to learn more about organizing. And that could be in your workplace. It could be community or political organizing, because things like beating apathy, assembling your dream team, turning an issue into a campaign, right? Those have pretty broad resonance, whether you're in a union environment or a potential union environment, or like I said, you're doing more political or community organizing work. And it's only a $15 cost for the entire series. And if you would like, you can actually do for $30, you get the 3 workshops and a subscription to the magazine, a 1-year subscription to the magazine for $30. So that's a good deal. But if you're interested, definitely check out labornotes.org/events for more information. And that's it, folks, for I believe this is now the 16th episode of Shop Talk. Hope it was worth your time, and I really appreciate everyone listening. If you enjoyed it, please share with your network and make sure that you're plugged into our work. Just a reminder that the Valley Labor Report is a working class media collective dedicated to lifting up labor struggles throughout Alabama and across the South. We bring you Alabama's only union talk radio show every Saturday morning, with the first half from 9:30 to 11 a.m. live on FM radio through WVNN here in the Huntsville listening area. The entire program is online via Facebook, YouTube, and podcast, and portions of the program are replayed on WZZA in the Shoals and WHIV out of New Orleans. So stay tuned to the Valley Labor Report on our Saturday morning feed, 9:30 a.m. Central, live on WVNN, YouTube, and Facebook, and sign up for our email list at tvlr.fm. Definitely encourage you to check out our website. We're publishing news and commentary relevant to working people, and we have our email newsletter that you can sign up for. And while you're there, you can check out our merch at tvlr.fm/store. And finally, we rely on donations and sponsorships to put out all of this free content. We appreciate the local unions and organizations that have sponsored ads on our main Saturday show. We are looking for more sponsors for Overtime and Shop Talk. Really appreciate Labor Notes for signing on as a sponsor for Shop Talk. Really do appreciate their support there. As much as we love and support our sponsors and advertisers, our single biggest source of contributions comes from listener donations, from folks like yourselves chipping in a couple bucks, and you can make a one-time donation or a recurring contribution at tvlr.fm/donate. We have a Patreon if you prefer to donate that way. You can even mail a good old-fashioned check to our P.O. box in Huntsville. And whether you donate, share, subscribe, or just listen, we really do appreciate your support, and we can't do it without you. So please don't forget to like, review, share, and subscribe. If you share our mission to grow the Southern labor movement, if you share our belief in the power of solidarity and collective organization, if you want media that is for working people by working people, please consider becoming a recurring donor at tvlr.fm/donate. All power to the workers. Solidarity, y'all.